Phyto Revival, the podcast, is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am excited to finally have a moment to sit down and do another podcast. We are currently moving to Kentucky, and it has just been a little crazy. But anyways, today I wanted to get on here and talk to you guys about an herb called Mullein. And if you haven't been to my podcast before, my name is Dez Haley. I have my degree in complementary alternative medicine and my focus in medical phytotherapy, which means that I focus on studying and researching the chemicals in plants and the effects that they have on the body. And on top of that, I am a homesteader and a mom of 4, and I am just living life. But a fair warning, I'm originally from Kansas, and I tend to mispronunciate things all the time. So you've been warned, just to let you know. And Mullein is definitely a little challenging in some of the words that I'm going to attempt to say today. So all of you language gurus, be kind to me. Okay, so Mullein is in the Scrophulariaceae family, and its common names are common mullein or woolly mullein, velvet plant, flannel leaf. Mostly you'll just hear people say mullein, especially in this area. And a lot of it, if you notice in a lot of the common names, they're talking about woolly or flannel or velvet. It's because of the little tiny hairs that are on the plant. And just to warn you, when you do make teas or anything with mullein, you want to use a finer strainer, maybe even just tying a coffee filter and making it into your tea bag, because the hairs can cause irritation on the back of your throat, even though mullein is also known as a mucilage, but we are going to get to that in a moment. So the plant can get up to 6 to 10 feet tall, which is equivalent to a 1.8 to 3 meters tall, it's quite tall. I'm only 5'3", so it can get quite big. The parts of the plant that you're going to want to isolate and use are the leaves. You can use them dried or fresh. The flowers are most commonly used dried, and occasionally people will use the roots, but it's not as common in practice. The therapeutic actions. I know I said mucilage, but I was thinking more of the demulcent aspects of it. So the therapeutic actions that are proven by evidence, these are evidence-based actions, is that it's a great expectorant, a demulcent, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial and antiviral, analgesic. I've always mispronounced that word, and I don't know why, because if I hear it, I know exactly what it means, but for some reason, my tongue does not like to say that word. It means it's pain relieving, just to let you know, and it's a mild diuretic. In traditional and clinical uses, mullein is most commonly used for respiratory health, so coughing, bronchitis, asthma, whooping cough, those types of ailments. And also, you do see it mixed with garlic a lot for earaches. So it can be either usually paired with garlic or St. John's wort and used as eardrops. It's also used topically for wounds. It can be add it to your sitz bath. If you have hemorrhoids or you have just given birth, it can kind of help with the topical healing of that area, and also can help with skin irritation as long as you're not allergic to it. On my Facebook page, I do have a group that I started for the podcast, so you have a place to go to get the handouts. So if you want a copy of the monograph, and I added a little coloring page so you can talk to your kids about the plant, and also just a fun little Mad Lib to make a silly little story about mullein. Those are on my Facebook page. So if you look up Phyto Revival, LLC, and it's PHYTO, meaning plant. And on that page, there's a group for the podcast, and you can get copies of all of the handouts that I have. But dosaging, when you're using it as a tea, it is usually 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried leaf or flower per cup, which is 8 ounces. And you want to steep it for about 10 to 15 minutes. In a tincture, it's used in a 1-to-5 ratio, which means 1 part plant, 5 parts alcohol, and the strength of the alcohol only needs to be 40% alcohol, which means 40% of the tincture is alcohol, the other 60% is water. And what's great about this is because on the next podcast, I'm going to go really deep into tinctures, but the different chemicals in the plant, some of them are dissolvable in water, some in alcohol, and whatever. But by using a tincture, you're getting both the alcohol-soluble and water-soluble medicine out of the plant, which is amazing. And when you're done making the tincture, you're going to do 2 to 4 milliliters up to 3 times daily. The oil, so that's going to extract the fat-soluble chemicals out of the plant. It's made up of the flowers, so you want to use the flowers in the oil, and it's infused for 3 to 6 weeks. I like to use either olive oil or hemp seed oil, depending on what I'm going to use the oil for. If I'm going to do it more for food, then I'm going to use olive. Topical, I tend to go with hemp seed oil. But you're going to infuse it for about 3 to 6 weeks. I also have tips and tricks in my Basics to Herbalism course that tells you faster ways you can do it, the best ways, the risks, I like to give people informed decisions. Like, I'm not telling you which way is the right way to practice because every herbalist has what works for them, and that's great. It's just like beekeeping. What works for one beekeeper, it doesn't necessarily work for all beekeepers. So you do have to play with it and figure out what works for you. But I like to give people a very well-rounded explanation and reasons on why I do things the way I do, and why I prefer not to do certain things. The best decisions you can make are informed ones, whatever works for you with all the information at hand. So, with that being said, after you're done infusing the oil, you want to strain it and you want to use this topically. A poultice, so say you wanted to make a poultice, you want to crush the leaves and into your mortar and pestle, just a little tiny bit of water if you need to make it a little bit more malleable. That is for external use only. And again, if you're going to do a tea to avoid irritation from the little hairs from the plant, you definitely want to use a very fine strainer to keep those hairs from getting into what you're actually going to be drinking. So, on top of that, I had actually found, this was really interesting, I'd found some interesting facts, and I did not actually know this about Mullein until I was just kind of gathering information for this podcast, but Mullein has a rich history of very diverse uses, which we did already know. But what I find interesting is how long the seeds last. They can actually remain viable for up to 100 years, which makes it almost impossible to get rid of Mullein because anytime for 100 years, these seeds could just be sitting there dormant and decide to sprout. So, and some of the information I found is that Native Americans and early American colonists would utilize the leaves for lining their shoes to help insulate and keep their feet warm. And the plant's stems were even used as torches by Roman soldiers. Beyond its practical applications, Mullein has a wide range of medicinal uses, including the antiviral properties against influenza and herpes. So let's talk about the seed persistence for a minute, because I was like, wow, because usually when you're gardening, if you guys are all avid gardeners, usually you have about 2 to 3 years to use the seeds, or they don't germinate. You don't get as many seeds germinating. So every year the seeds become less viable, if I can speak today. A single mullein plant can produce an enormous number of seeds, potentially reaching 180,000 seeds from one plant. And like I said, these seeds can remain dormant in the soil for decades and even centuries, making it challenging to eradicate the plant completely from an area. In some of the historical and traditional uses, we talked about the Roman torch, where Roman soldiers dipped the mullein stems in grease and created torches, because remember, these are tall plants. They're 6 to 10 feet tall, and they're a little bit easier to take down than a tree is or a branch. Native American footwear, they like to line their moccasins for insulation. And mullein as a tool, ancient Roman women would use the flowers or for dyeing their graying hair more yellow. So historically, it was also used as a hair dye. That's kind of cool. But other than that, the main reasons that have been backed by evidence for its use is for respiratory support, antiviral activity, and skin conditions to help like heal sunburns or other irritations. But other than that, that is really all there really is to know at this time about mullein. I do, like I said, I have some fun sheets is what I called. It's actually an album called Fun Sheets for various sheets that I'm going to be posting. I'm also have an album for monographs and stuff like that. So if you're a homeschooler and you want to dig a little bit deeper in on more of the botany or plant identification, foraging type stuff, these are some tools that could help you. Mullein is a biennial, which means it lives for 2 years, and it's got the rosette of hairy leaves in the first year and the tall flowering stalk in the second year. And yeah, so it can become invasive, but it's not as invasive because the way that the seeds can lie dormant forever, which I just find it interesting. Just like the pink dandelion, which I might do a podcast on that. I'm going to grow it first because I have pink dandelion seeds, and it says it has all the medicinal benefits. It is not GMO. This is native to Asia, and it has all the medicinal benefits. It's a yellow dandelion, but it's non-invasive, and that blows my mind because if everything is the same, how is the seeds non-invasive? But I will do my little experiment and I will get back with you. But I am so sorry that I am late on this podcast, and I hope that you feel inclined to kind of share it with other people and get the word out. Once I get settled in Kentucky, I am starting a YouTube channel about how to. I make shampoos, conditioners. I infuse my oils and use them in the stuff. I've done lotions. It took me 3 years to perfect my deodorant recipe. I'm going to start sharing all of my recipes, all of my tea blends, all of my product making, things I like and don't like, liquid laundry soap versus powdered laundry soap, or, things on the homestead. And I'm going to update you guys with the progress of the new property and building the homestead and everything. We are going to be on a foothill of the Appalachian Mountains, surrounded by the Daniel Boone National Forest. So it is absolutely stunning, and there's so much more for me to learn, and I'm excited to share with you guys on what I learned. So other than that, that is it. That's going to conclude today. As soon as I get a chance, it might even be later today. You guys might get 2 podcasts today because right now my house is quiet and there's no interruptions, and I'm able to actually get this out. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I appreciate it. And this is my passion, and I absolutely love all of this. So I really hope to get to know some of you guys as well. According to the data, I am in 6 other countries right now. And thank you guys for listening. So if you're either from, it doesn't matter where you're from, why don't you come to the Facebook group and introduce yourself, because I would love to learn more about the people that I am speaking to right now too. So anyways, that's it. This is called a Midwestern goodbye, where you say goodbye about 3 times and you keep talking. But this is really goodbye. Have a great day. Bye.